We will be covering anatomy and physiology of endocrine system in this video. The endocrine system is a collection of glands that secrete hormones. Hormone is a chemical signal or chemical that released in one part of the body that travel to target tissues and affect cells in other parts of the body to tell them to do something. A gland may be a separate structure or on its own, or it may be made up of a group of cells within an organ that function together to produce hormones. The hormones produced by the gland are secreted outside the cells that produce them. There are no special ducts to carry the hormones to their destination. Instead, the bloodstream is a transportation system. Once secreted by the gland, the hormones are transported by the blood and travel everywhere the blood travels. It can be to the liver, the eye, even the big toe. Although a hormone travels everywhere, it has an effect only on its target tissues because the cells of the target tissue have receptors for that specific hormone. A gland is an organ or a group of cells that are specialized for synthesizing and secreting a substance. There are two different types, exocrine glands and endocrine glands. Exocrine glands discharge their secretions through a duct into the external environment, for example, saliva, sweat, and tears. Endocrine glands secrete hormones directly into the bloodstream, and for this reason they are often called ductless glands. Endocrine system uses hormones to control and coordinate the body's metabolism, energy level, reproduction, growth and development, and a response to injury, stress, and mood. Along with the nervous system, it makes the neuroendocrine system, which controls and regulates many of the body's functions. The endocrine system works with the nervous system to maintain homeostasis, with the hypothalamus being the major link between them. The endocrine functions of the hypothalamus include the production and release of hormones, so it is considered to be neuroendocrine organ. Like the nervous system, the endocrine system is all about communication. It involves one part of the body communicating with another part of the body to maintain homeostasis. Now we will see the similarities and differences between these two systems. Both systems use chemicals as messengers. The nervous system uses chemical neurotransmitters and the endocrine system uses chemicals called hormones to carry messages. The nervous system responds to a stimuli with very fast electrical action potential that result in the release of neurotransmitters. Also, the nervous system can be very specific by targeting just a few cells of the muscle. The effects of this communication can be stopped immediately if the nervous system stops sending nerve impulses. In contrast, the endocrine system responds to a stimulus by producing a chemical hormone and secreting it outside the gland that produced it. The blood carries this hormone throughout the body. The hormone will work not just on a few cells but on all of the cells that have a receptor for it. The effects of the hormone will continue until it has been cleared from the target tissue. Communication through the endocrine system is much slower to start, is less specific as to its target, and it takes longer to end than communication by the nervous system. What are the functions of endocrine system? The main function of the endocrine system is to release hormones into the blood while continuously monitoring the levels. Hormones deliver their messages they target by locking into the cells so they can relay messages. A person has more than 50 different hormones and they affect nearly all aspects of the health. It can affect directly or indirectly. The functions include metabolism, homeostasis such as blood pressure and blood sugar regulation, fluid and electrolyte balance and body temperature, regulation of growth and development, sexual function, reproduction, sleep-wake cycle, regulation of mood. Very small amounts of hormones can trigger significant responses and changes in the body. If the body has too little or too much of hormone, it affects the health. This often causes noticeable symptoms. The endocrine system consists of glands located throughout the body, hormones made by the glands and released into the bloodstream or the fluid surrounding cells, and receptors in various organs and tissues that recognize and respond to the hormones. The major glands of the endocrine system include the hypothalamus, pituitary gland, thyroid gland, parathyroid gland, pineal gland, pancreas, adrenal gland, ovaries, and testicles. The hypothalamus and pituitary glands are neuroendocrine organs. Now we will cover hormones briefly. A hormone is a chemical signal produced and secreted by an endocrine gland in one part of the body and transported in the bloodstream to affect tissues or organs in another part. Hormones coordinate different functions in the body by carrying messages through the body to the organs, skin, muscles, and other tissues. These signals tell the body what to do and when to do. Hormones are essential for life and the health. Hormones can be classified as steroid or non-steroid. Steroid hormones, which are synthesized from cholesterol, are insoluble in water but soluble in lipids, which are also known as fats. Therefore, they can easily diffuse into nearly any cell in the body because lipids make up most cell membranes. They include male and female sex hormones as well as aldosterone secreted by the adrenal cortex. Non-steroid or protein-based hormones are synthesized from amino acids. They can be further divided into protein hormones, peptide hormones, or amino acid derivative hormones. Examples of protein hormones are insulin, peptide hormones are antidiuretic hormones, amino acid derivative hormones are epinephrine and norepinephrine. Non-steroid hormones include amines, glycoproteins, peptides, and proteins, which are made from amino acids. Regardless of classification, hormones travel through the bloodstream to stimulate specific target cells. The target cells may lie anywhere in the body. It can be close to the gland or far from it. Once a hormone reaches the target cells, it binds with the receptor to trigger changes within the cell. How this occurs, though, depends upon whether the hormone is a steroid or protein-based hormone. There are three general categories of hormones based upon chemical structure. They are steroids, amino acid derivatives, and proteins. The chemical composition matters because it directly affects how the hormone relates to its receptor. Steroid hormones are derived from a cholesterol molecule. Examples of steroid hormones include estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, mineralocorticoids, and glucocorticoids. As lipids, they can pass through cell membrane to reach receptors anywhere in the cell. Cholesterol often has a bad reputation as being harmful to the body. However, it is needed to synthesize steroid hormones and other digestive salts. Cholesterol can be acquired through the diet and can be produced by the liver. It is a steroid found in high concentration in liver and egg yolks. It is also found in whole milk, butter, cheese, meat, but cholesterol is not found in plants. Next is amino acid derivatives. As the name implies, these hormones are derived from amino acids. Thyroid hormone, epinephrine, and melatonin are examples of amino acid derivatives. This type of hormone may or may not be able to cross cell membranes. For example, thyroid hormone can easily pass across a cell membrane to reach a receptor inside the cell, while epinephrine cannot. Next is protein. Protein hormones are made of chains of amino acids. Examples of protein hormones include insulin, thyroid stimulating hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, growth hormone, parathyroid hormone, antidiuretic hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone, glucagon, calcitonin, oxytocin, and hormones from the hypothalamus. Proteins are too large to pass through cell membrane. There are many target tissues for the various hormones of the body. What makes a tissue a target tissue is the presence of specific receptors for specific hormones based on the hormone's chemical makeup and shape. The two basic classes of receptors for hormones are based on their location, either on the cell membrane or somewhere inside the cell. Protein hormones must bind to receptors on the cell membrane because they cannot enter the cell. They fit into the receptors on the basis of their specific shape, like a key fits into a lock. The hormones may initiate a response directly on the membrane, such as opening a channel, or they may initiate a response inside the cell, such as initiating protein synthesis. If the response is to occur inside the cell, a second messenger system must be used. In this system, the binding of a hormone in the receptor on the cell membrane causes a chemical reaction inside the membrane. This reaction creates a second messenger which then carries the information to where it is needed in the cell to initiate the function of the hormone. Steroid hormones and thyroid hormones can directly cross the membrane and fit into receptors inside the cell where the function will be carried out. They do not need a second messenger. Protein-based hormones can't penetrate the cell wall. Consequently, they bind to receptors on the cell surface. The binding of the hormone activates a second messenger system. The second messenger then activates specific enzymes. Enzymes then influence cellular reactions, producing the cell's response to the hormone. So, the second messenger stimulates changes inside the cell as a function of the hormone. The location of the target tissue is also relevant to the eventual delivery method of the hormone. Hormone function can be categorized by the location of the cells producing the hormone relative to the location of their target tissues. The vast number of different activities that take place in cells are coordinated by a complex communication system that involves the use of different types of chemical signals. Chemical signal molecule, sometimes referred to as the first messenger, is a substance that is released into body fluids which brings about a cellular response. There are several types of chemical signaling, a key difference between them being the distance that the signaling molecule travels to reach its target. First one is autocrine signaling or self-signaling. It occurs when a cell secretes a signaling molecule that may bind to receptors on the same cell, for example, interleukin. An example of this is the production of prostaglandin by the smooth muscles of the uterus, which causes the smooth muscle of the uterus to contract during birth. Next one is synaptic signaling. It occurs at the synapses when neurons secrete chemical signals, that is, neurotransmitters, which diffuse across the synaptic gap to adjacent neurons. Examples are acetylcholine and noradrenaline. Next is paracrine signaling. It is a form of cell-cell communication in which a cell produces signals that induce a quick response in nearby cells. The signaling molecules are secreted by cells into interstitial fluid and regulate the activity of neighboring target cells before being rapidly broken down. Examples are histamine and prostaglandins. Endocrine cells in the stomach causes neighboring cells to produce hydrochloric acid. Next is endocrine signaling. It is carried out by hormones released into the bloodstream which bind with hormone receptors on the target cells. Compared to local signaling, endocrine signaling is sometimes relatively slow as it relies on diffusion and blood flow. Examples: hormones that affect metabolism such as insulin, testosterone, and progesterone. Next is neurocrine signaling. It occurs when neurons release chemical signals into the bloodstream that affect distant cells. Examples are the hormones adrenaline and oxytocin. A cell must have specific receptor proteins on its plasma membranes or interior to which the hormone can bind to respond to the hormone. For example, the receptors for adrenocorticotropic hormone are usually found on specific cells of the adrenocortex. Oppositely, thyroxine receptors are found in almost all body cells because thyroxine is the main hormone that stimulates cellular metabolism. Target cell activation also depends on three additional factors: the blood levels of the hormone, the amount of receptors for that hormone on or in target cells, and the strength or affinity of how the hormone and the receptors are bound. Hormones also influence the amount of receptors that respond to other hormones. An example is progesterone, which antagonizes the actions of estrogen by down-regulating estrogen receptors in the uterus. Conversely, estrogen enhances the same cell's ability to respond to progesterone by causing them to produce more progesterone receptors. The process of upregulation involves absence of a hormone, which triggers an increase in the amount of hormone receptors. The physiology of endocrine system includes the regulation of a hormone secretion and distribution, the regulation of a sensitivity of a target tissue to a hormone through the regulation of its receptors, and the elimination of hormones. Most hormones are not secreted at a constant rate. They are secreted when there is a need, and their secretion is usually regulated by negative feedback mechanisms. There are three mechanisms by which endocrine glands are stimulated to synthesize and release hormones. They are humoral stimuli, hormonal stimuli, and neural stimuli. First is neurostimuli or neurostimulation of a gland. In some cases, the nervous system directly stimulates endocrine glands to release hormones, which is referred to as neurostimuli. An example of neural stimulation of a gland is activation of the fight or flight response by the sympathetic nervous system. When an individual perceives danger, sympathetic neurons signal the adrenal glands to secrete norepinephrine and epinephrine. The two hormones dilate blood vessels, increase the heart and respiratory rate, and suppress the digestive and immune system. These responses boost the body's transport of oxygen to the brain and muscle, thereby improving the body's ability to fight or flee. Next is hormonal stimuli or another hormone stimulating a gland. The hormonal stimuli refers to the release of a hormone in response to another hormone. A number of endocrine glands release hormones when stimulated by hormones released by other endocrine glands. For example, the hypothalamus produces hormones that stimulate the anterior portion of the pituitary gland. The anterior pituitary in turn releases hormones that regulate hormones produced by other endocrine glands. The anterior pituitary releases the thyroid stimulating hormone, which then stimulates the thyroid gland to produce the hormone T3 and T4. As blood concentrations of T3 and T4 rises, they inhibit both the pituitary and hypothalamus in a negative feedback loop. Another example, gonadotropin releasing hormone from the hypothalamus results in the secretion of follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone from the anterior pituitary gland. Next is humoral stimuli or substance other than a hormone stimulating a gland. The term humoral is derived from the term humor, which refers to bodily fluids such as blood. A humorous stimuli refers to the control of hormone release in response to changes in extracellular fluids such as blood or the iron concentration in the blood. For example, a rise in blood glucose levels triggers the pancreatic release of insulin. Glucose is not a hormone, but if glucose levels are high, the pancreas responds to that stimulation by secreting insulin. Insulin causes blood glucose levels to drop, which signals the pancreas to stop producing insulin in a negative feedback loop. It will be helpful to look at an example of the secretion of a thyroid hormone and the negative feedback mechanism that regulates it. If a person go outside when it is very cold but are undressed, the hypothalamus may try to speed up the metabolism to generate more body heat. This negative feedback mechanism is the thyroid's method of saying to the anterior pituitary and hypothalamus that it has received the message to secrete thyroid hormone and is following through on the message. It keeps the secretion rate from going too high. The chemical composition affects how the hormone is distributed in the blood. Thyroid hormone in the last example can easily pass through cell membrane. However, if it were allowed to do that, much of the thyroid hormone would immediately go into the cells, causing a huge spike in metabolism and then a dramatic fall when the hormone was used up. The body has a way to time release thyroid hormone and steroid hormones that can easily pass through cell membranes. Transport proteins or plasma proteins made by the liver are used to bind to some of the hormone in the blood. The bond is a reversible one, meaning that at any one time, some of the hormone will be free to enter the cell and some of the hormone will be bound to plasma proteins, making it too large to enter the cell. As time goes by, more of the hormone is freed from the plasma protein so that it can enter the cell. Hormones that cannot cross the cell membrane do not need a plasma membrane to bind. The effects of a hormone will continue until the hormone is eliminated from the system. Therefore, the method of hormone elimination is important in regulating the duration of hormones' effects. Hormones may be eliminated from the body in 4 ways. First is through excretion. The kidneys can remove a hormone from the blood and excrete it in urine. Or the liver can remove a hormone from the blood and excrete it in bile. Next is through metabolism. Enzymes in the blood, liver, kidneys, or other target tissues can break down the hormone and excrete it or use it for cellular processes. For example, the breakdown of protein hormones results in amino acids that can be used for protein synthesis. Next, elimination is through active transport. A hormone such as epinephrine can be taken back up by a cell through active transport so that it can be recycled and released at another time. Next, elimination through conjugation. The liver can bind water-soluble molecules to a hormone so that it will be excreted at a faster rate. Increasing or decreasing secretion of a hormone results in increased or decreased blood levels of hormone. This is because hormones are continually excreted in the urine and broken down mostly by liver enzymes. Negative feedback is a mechanism that controls hormone secretion. It is triggered by an internal or external stimulus. Now, we will review each gland in detail. First, we will cover hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is a part of the brain located superior and anterior to the brainstem and inferior to the thalamus and making up the floor of the third cerebral ventricle. It is located at the base of the brain near the pituitary gland or above the pituitary gland. Hypothalamus is a small cone-shaped structure that projects downward from the brain, ending in the pituitary stalk, a tubular connection to the pituitary gland. The hypothalamus is connected to the pituitary gland's two parts by a stalk that is called infundibulum, which serves as a passageway. The hypothalamus plays a major role as a gateway for the brain to control the endocrine system. The hypothalamus is sometimes called the master of the endocrine system because this tiny complex gland produces its own hormones, controls the release of hormones from the pituitary gland, and plays a vital role in maintaining homeostasis. The hypothalamus contains a control center for many functions of the autonomic nervous system, and it has effects on the endocrine system because of its complex interaction with the pituitary gland. Hormones produced by endocrine cells in the hypothalamus enter the blood through the capillary beds in the hypothalamus. The blood then carries the hormones through the infundibulum directly to capillary beds in the anterior pituitary. Hormones can then leave the bloodstream to bind to their receptors in the anterior pituitary. This system of blood vessels allows for the direct distribution of hormones through the blood from the hypothalamus to the anterior pituitary without traveling to the rest of the body. Hormones from the hypothalamus directly affect the release of hormones from the anterior pituitary. Being parts of the limbic system, the hypothalamus receives information from nearly all parts of the nervous system and is also sensitive to the composition of the blood that flows through it. It gathers and integrates information about the external environment and uses it to adjust conditions in the internal environment, which keeps the body in homeostasis. The functions of hypothalamus include releasing hormone, maintaining daily physiological cycles, example, circadian rhythms, that is, sleep-wake cycles, controlling appetite such as hunger and satiety, that is, feeling of fullness, managing sexual behavior, regulating emotional responses, regulating a stable body temperature, regulating fluid and electrolyte balance including taste, managing stress response, regulating menstrual cycle. The hypothalamus contains special cells called neurosecretory cells. They are neurons that secrete hormones. Hormones produced by the hypothalamus come from two sets of nerve cells that communicate in different ways with the pituitary gland. One set secrete releasing hormone and the other set secrete neurohormones. Releasing hormones produced by the hypothalamus control the production of anterior pituitary hormones by either stimulating or inhibiting their release. These hormones are secreted directly into the bloodstream and reach the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland via a network of blood vessels that run down through the pituitary stalk. Now we will see what are the releasing hormones or what are the hormones produced in the anterior region of the hypothalamus. First one is thyrotropin releasing hormone. The production of thyrotropin releasing hormone stimulates the pituitary gland to produce thyroid stimulating hormone and prolactin. Thyroid stimulating hormone plays an important role in the function of many body parts such as the muscles, heart, and gastrointestinal tract. Next is gonadotropin releasing hormone. Production of gonadotropin releasing hormone causes the pituitary gland to produce important reproductive hormones such as follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. It stimulates the onset of puberty and the sexual development in both males and females. Next is corticotropin releasing hormone. Corticotropin releasing hormone is involved in the body's response to both physical and emotional stress. It signals the pituitary gland to produce a hormone called adrenocorticotropic hormone. This adrenocorticotropic hormone triggers the production of cortisol. It is an important stress hormone. Next is growth hormone releasing hormone. It stimulates the secretion of growth hormone. In the middle region of the hypothalamus, growth hormone releasing hormone stimulates the pituitary gland to produce growth hormone. This is responsible for the growth and development of the body. Next is somatostatin, also called growth hormone inhibiting hormone. Somatostatin works to stop the pituitary gland from releasing certain hormones including growth hormone and TSH. Next is dopamine. It inhibits the release of a prolactin from the pituitary gland. Next type is neurohormone. Neurohormones pass along nerve fibers in the pituitary stalk to the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland where they are stored until required and then released into the bloodstream. The two neurohormones produced in the hypothalamus are antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin. First, we will see antidiuretic hormone. This hormone is primarily known as ADH because of its action on the kidneys. It is sometimes called vasopressin when secreted in high concentrations to stimulate contraction of smooth muscles in the walls of arterioles in response to hemorrhage or dehydration. Vasopressin regulates water levels in the body. When vasopressin is released, it signals the kidneys to absorb water. Next is oxytocin. This hormone controls many important behaviors and emotions such as sexual arousal, trust, recognition, and maternal behavior. It is also involved in some functions of the reproductive system such as childbirth and lactation. Oxytocin stimulates the uterus to contract at the end of pregnancy. It is also essential for the milk ejection reflex, which releases the flow of milk in the breast of nursing mothers.